Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell and members. Today I'm laying out Senate Bill 26, the first of several bills in my package for the legislative session for teacher rights, protections, and compensation. Also, Senate Bill 26, as you know, is one of Governor Abbott's emergency items. It's been established by Lieutenant Governor Patrick as one of the high priority, low bill number pieces of legislation for the Senate, so that it's very clear when we have a priority set of the bills that we want to travel as fast as possible to get to the floor of the Senate and considered for a vote, and so that those bills can get over to the House for the attention that they deserve. Members, we all agree that Texas teachers deserve real support and protections. They deserve to know that the people of Texas and state lawmakers value their work, not just in words, but in deed and in action. Senate Bill 26 is our first step, again, in a series of legislative bills this session as we craft the strongest Texas Teacher Bill of Rights our state has ever seen, and other states will be modeling this legislation as we brought this legislation forward last session, and other states at that time mentioned and announced that they were modeling this Texas bill. Under this plan, the bill delivers historic pay raises across the board by establishing a permanent allotment for teacher salaries. And so that is a very key point in this layout and introduction. Is there's always talk about stipends and bonuses and pay raises, right? But our budget does not currently have an allotment just for teacher retention and pay. So in creating that, we're creating a budget culture of permanence and a budget culture that makes it very clear when that allotment cup is full and when it's not. Under this plan, teachers will receive guaranteed pay raises in their third and fifth years of teaching, ensuring that they don't just start strong, but that they stay strong in their careers going forward. And for our teachers in small and rural districts, we're providing an additional parity increase with resources that will be used this session to close the pay gap that exists currently for those educators. There's been a lot of talk about does the bulk of this historic money, and we can't find that in this millennium and we're searching back decades prior to that, that the state of Texas or any other state has provided this amount of money all together for teacher pay. It's historic. But there's been some concern that all of this money is just for bonus allocations. I want to make clear in our layout today and presentation of Senate Bill 26 that 80% of the nearly $5 billion of historic money is authorized by this bill to go directly for raises to classroom teachers across the board within that eligible framework, right? Year one teachers, they've just negotiated their starting salary and they've just begun, right? And they'll teach into that first year and into the second year. And Texas ranks about 15th in the nation in starting salaries for teachers. But for our experienced teachers, we rank 40th. And we all know at that 60-month mark that we have many teachers surveyed that are making a decision whether or not they feel safe, they have a reasonable learning environment in their classroom, and they're supported by administrators in keeping that, right, discipline, which we have an incredible discipline bill coming this session that our teachers are going to be very, very pleased with, and compensation is obviously got to be at the top of the list because life has to make sense, right? Your heart and your mind and your profession, but also being able to make things work with the constraints and the budgets and how much it costs to raise a family and make sure that bills are taken care of at the end of the day. So 80% of the dollars are allocated out of this nearly $5 billion package for across the board teacher pay raises for those eligible teachers. And then 20% of this investment goes towards expanding the teacher incentive allotment, because when educators go above and beyond and they show that kind of performance based on outcomes, and we'll have several tiers to explain to you today on that eligibility. It's very exciting how it's set up. They should all be rewarded. So when TIA was created in 2019, the incentive allotments, that was in 2019, there were 300 teachers in the program. Now there are nearly 30,000. This investment's made it possible for even more high-performing teachers to earn, we said at the time, up to $100,000 annually. Many of them are now over $100,000 annually. And we've got some recalibration in this framework that will also allow what now under teacher incentive allotments is about a third of the school's teachers to qualify. This framework stretches that and moves that and expands it to 50% of the teachers that will qualify in this framework in that given school. We're very excited about that part of it. No state has ever made a teacher pay commitment of this magnitude. We know there are some bills in the session that are not popular. We know some bills are very popular. We would ask you to consider these efforts today and the rest of our pro-public school, pro-teacher, and supports and all personnel in school districts, and certainly as important or most important, our students and their outcomes, to be an incredible focus for the rest of this session, which really has just begun. And you'll be seeing from all of our members on this dais presentations on bills that you'll be very excited about that you may not have known were coming. This legislation for Teacher Bill of Rights is not just about pay. The legislation will provide free pre-K for the children of Texas teachers.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Free pre-K for the children of Texas teachers, because no teacher should have to choose between their career and their family's needs. And right now, if that pre-K is offered, teachers are charged for those services. For the first time, we're creating a liability protection program from the state to ensure that teachers can enforce discipline in their classroom. And again, we'll have a new discipline framework coming forward, and separately a new truancy framework coming forward to provide a learning environment not disrupted on campus so that teachers can not only hone their craft, but excel at what they're doing on that campus day in and day out, while they're even in the profession in the first place, without constant disruptors. A teacher should never have to choose between maintaining order and protecting themselves. Again, remember, across many of the surveys that we're seeing from our Texas teachers across the state, safety polls as the number one concern. Lastly, this bill creates, again, as mentioned, a new teacher pay allotment. We've removed the constraints on the basic allotment that currently exist that tell districts how to spend the money in the basic allotment. So as we're creating a permanent teacher pay allotment, we call it a teacher pay and retention allotment in the budget that you will clearly be able to see each session. The basic allotment guardrails and restrictions telling districts that are so diverse how to use that BA will come down and be decoupled, so that pay to nurses and bus drivers and support staff and all those that are employed by the district, that as we relieve pressures off of the basic allotment by putting nearly $5 billion of compensation in its own allotment for teachers, that basic allotment is freed up without those current guardrails. Governor Abbott's made teacher compensation an emergency item. I believe that's very consistent with all of our members in both parties. The Texas Senate is ready to act swiftly, but Senate Bill 26, again, is just one of several pieces of legislation that will address teacher safety, teacher rights, and teacher compensation. We actually have other bills coming that will be other financial incentives for our teachers as well that are outside of this framework. I'll introduce additional legislation to tackle the challenges facing our teachers, from safety to discipline to contract protections and teacher preparation and support in hearings coming very soon. Madam Vice Chair, I do have a committee substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Mays sends up committee substitute. We recognize Senator Creighton to explain the difference in the bill.
And members, part of needing a substitute is how fast we're moving. Emergency items, we normally have a 60-day pause, and the ability for you to review our bills and for ourselves to review our bills, for our drafters to have time with 11,000 great ideas that will be flowing as bills this session. But we had to make a couple of adjustments. This committee substitute, members, going forward, teachers will want to obtain or renew their TIA designation. They will need to demonstrate their mastery through their outcomes with their students, and the schools that they work in, their districts that they work in, will help determine that eligibility framework, exactly how it will work for that particular district. Governor Abbott's emergency item proclamation calls for merit-based compensation programs, not compensation based on national certifications. So with the removal in the committee substitute of the reference to a national board certification as a pathway to obtaining a TIA designation, we are shifting more towards, as I mentioned, merit. And if the national board certification is as high quality as proponents suggest, I would expect that board certified teachers to earn that designation with or without that fast track, and that performance level will be shown in the classroom either way. Additionally, we'll have made some non-substantive changes in the language of the teacher retention allotment to the new allotment we're creating to ensure that raises actually flow to the experienced teachers we intend to receive them. And so we're making that very specific on how those dollars flow from that new teacher pay allotment. And no offense, but just to make sure it doesn't end up with administrators or in some other program that's swept from the budget because maybe teacher pay raises already happened at one point or what might be the case. We're very focused on our goal, which soon after this bill and a few others this session, we believe that adjusted for cost of living, we may be only second to New York in America for what we pay our Texas teachers. The future of Texas begins in the classroom, as I've said very often, members. We want the best for our students, and by setting that as a goal, we have to deliver the best for our teachers. And I'm happy to take questions before we get to our very valuable testimony.
Thank you, Senator Creighton. First of all, let the record show that Senator Mays Middleton was the one who sent the committee substitute up. Number two, let the committee show that Senators West, Menendez, and Hagenbu are present. With that, members, we have some questions. Senator West.
All right, thank you. On page 2 of the committee substitute.
Oh, I do. I wanted to adopt the substitute. Okay. Thank you for that. Senator Mays Middleton moves adoption of the committee substitute for Senate Bill 26. Is there any objection to the adoption? Hearing none. The committee substitute is now adopted. Now, members, thank you.
On page 2, I guess 3, It says implement for all instructional staff a compensation plan based on performance that. Instructional staff. Is there a definition for instructional staff?
Yeah, Senator West, thank you for that. We had originally had that as those that provide provide services as a classroom teacher or instructional support in that learning environment. Is that correct? Yeah, if they're providing instruction and assistance in that classroom, they would qualify.
So a teacher?
That's right.
So this is synonymous with being a teacher.
Correct.
You see my concern when we say instructionals, we use teacher in one of the subs, and then we come back and use instructional staff. But for sake of consistency, if it's just for teachers, then we should use teachers. So my recommendation is for you to consider putting teachers in, implement for all teachers a compensation plan, because instructional staff, to me, is broader than just teachers.
Yeah, we'll either align that terminology to say teachers throughout, or we'll further define it.
Okay, very good.
And I'll work with you on that.
Okay.
Thank you for mentioning that, Senator West.
Senator Bettencourt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Creighton, great bill, because it is an historic bill, and only Texas could have an historic pay raise for teachers and an historic property tax cut, and et cetera. I could go down the line. You mentioned that 80% of the monies will be for a across-the-board teacher pay raise. There are, however, some graduations in that you might want to explain, and that means about $1 billion ends up in the teacher incentive allotment and several other, worthwhile uses that you've got with the bill. Is that true?
That's true. That's correct.
So effectively, what we're talking about with this type of across-the-board raise, you'll have an opportunity, if this bill passes both the Senate and the House, and the governor signs it, for master's level teachers to potentially make $100,000.
That's exactly right, and that is happening as well.
Right.
Today.
Because I mean, right now that can happen, and I think part of what the change here is to recognize the obvious. The obvious is to, raise a pay that makes sure that the teachers themselves in year 3, through 4 or 5, understand that this is a profession that if they like it, they can, make a living at it. And then with the teacher incentive allotment, it's a way for those that really put the extra, time and attention and become recognized effectively by their districts and, and to some degree, obviously their peers, as being up to a master's level teacher, to be able to have a substantial, AKA bonus for a teacher incentive allotment, which I think is a great thing. No, you would agree?
Exactly right. Yes, these bonuses are between $3,000 and $36,000 above base salaries, and continue to climb with our continued enhancement. Obviously, the bulk of the money that we're putting forward today, this historic nearly $5 billion, is for the categories in the across-the-board pay raise. But the teacher incentive allotment, it's 7 times larger than it was when it was first created, just not many years ago, in the number of teachers using it. And since 2023, it's doubled.
Right.
Just since 2023 in the number of teachers that it's affecting. So if we stayed on that pace, we're nearly at 30,000 teachers now. If it continued to double, we'd soon be at 60. Then on to 100.
Right.
we have to continue to ramp it up as it's used and as we get feedback that it's been very beneficial. But in our hearings, we've had many TIA qualified teachers come in and say, we first thought that it might affect morale up and down the hallway of some teachers that obtain it and some teachers don't. But what we've had incredible testimony on is that it has increased morale overall, with teachers that see the framework and see that it's very achievable and that they have something to look forward to and to work towards. And it not only has not hurt morale, it's motivated teachers to stay in the profession.
Well, and why not, Senator Creighton? Because in every well-run business enterprise, a well-earned bonus improves morale, improves retention. It improves productivity, improves the output of everyone involved. And we're talking about, the single most important variable that we know once people get into the classroom is the teacher. And so by giving them this level of support across the board, and then whether it's a $3,000, $12, $15, $18, $36, there's all sorts of, graduations here of being able to add that bonus on. I mean, that's the sign of a well-run business enterprise, the sign of a well-run school system. It's the sign of a state that has recognized the value of teachers in the classroom, and we want to compensate those across the board, but also compensate those up to a master level that are at a level of excellence.
That's exactly right. And we'll certainly will have good testimony on that today. We continue to improve and support and enhance the program. Is my mic working okay?
Right.
Yeah. So as we do, we're working on this because we're listening and we're hearing from our teachers and our superintendents and their organizations of what would be best for a day in the life of. I know the 7 public school teachers in my family, the teachers that are in all of our families, that they are one heck of an advisory committee for us, right? And we hear from the teachers in our district. We walk the halls of our classrooms and sit in these classes and go through a day in the life of and understand the struggles and the feedback and the surveyed sentiment. But this teacher incentive allotment is changing lives. And hearts and mind, this is not the reason why many teachers went into the profession, right? But they need support. They need a orderly classroom environment so that they can shine with their own skills on behalf of their students. And they need some pay incentives that will make life make sense, because you have to pay the bills. No matter how much purpose-driven life you have, life is expensive.
Well, Senator Creighton, glad to sign on. I also want to remind the audience that, one of the fun things when you look back at all this is the Senate believed in this so much that on a motion of Senator Gutierrez in the first special session, we added teacher pay to the record property tax relief bill. So we had record teacher pay on top of a record property tax bill. Then it looks like we're finally going to get to the latter.
Thank you, Senator Bittencourt. Senator Parker.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. What an honor to be with all of you today. I'm excited. I know all of us on this dais are excited. I hope all the teachers in Texas are excited because this is truly historic. You've used the term. That term is thrown around perhaps politically too often, but it is really an accurate assessment when you see where we are today and that no other state in the country, Texas itself, has never done something of this magnitude. And what it will mean for real people, for real families, these teachers. The fact that they'll have the ability to provide for their families and not have to choose between fulfilling career and serving children, while at the same time being able to take care of their own expenses and provide for their families. So I just want to thank you, Chairman Creighton, for your leadership. It's a historic day, not just a historic bill, but a historic day to have it here in the Senate, to get this bill moving, because it's real relief. We know that so many teachers are struggling with the challenging inflationary environment of the last few years that's really been tied directly to the ridiculous spending of the previous administration in Washington. And we know that help is on the way. And this will make a big difference. Both of my daughters graduated from the public school in the Louisville ISD. And I couldn't be more proud of our public schools. Our public schools are the backbone of our economy, of our state. And this really just puts our resources where they need to be, taking care of those every day that take care of our kids. Because at the end of the day, it's the most precious investment that we have. Our most precious asset is our children. And to have teachers that are there to make a difference, not to worry about their own livelihood, but to be able to make a difference in the classroom for these precious babies of ours, makes an enormous difference for the future. So I want to thank you for your leadership. And I know I share your excitement along with all the members when we talk about all the things that we'll do. Not only historic compensation, but to address this Bill of Rights, to address the issues around safety, to address all of the challenges that teachers are dealing with today in a manner that is so clear and purpose-driven, and that will make a real difference for teachers. At the end of the day, there's no profession that is more noble. And we recognize that. All of us recognize that. And that's why I'm so grateful to your leadership, Senator Creighton, and all the members, and to our Lieutenant Governor for being the driving force behind this great package. So excited about the testimony today and moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Okay, members, we will now open up public testimony.
Chairman. One light.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
All right.
Senator King.
Green's just hard to see from that far away, so. Clashes with the yellows.
Oh,
Oh, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Madam Chair, so much. Chairman, I just want to just mention that, first, like a lot of y'all, I have a lot of small school districts and I have some really large school districts. And I so appreciate the fact that there's a differential here, a recognition of the difficulty that they're not all rural, but because sometimes they're on the border of an urban area, and they're a smaller school district, and it's just very difficult to compete when someone just across the county line can pay so much more. And we see so many teachers that'll drive at 30 miles a day because they can make a little bit more money in the larger school district. And so I really appreciate the attention that this gives to that differential. I also want to just mention, too, that I was a police officer for many, many years, and every rank was paid the same. And it was always so frustrating to me that I would be out really working hard and putting that in that extra effort, and I was getting paid the exact same thing of someone who was really just coming to work, doing their minimal amount and going away. And when we finally started having some differentials for different achievements, you know, it didn't make you stay at the job, but it just made you really feel like your extra work was worth something. And it just really encouraged you to, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. So I think that the attention to the teacher incentive allotment, I just think that is so important, because it's that pat on the back, it's that recognition, but it also just lets those teachers know that are that when they're putting in the extra effort, that it's noticed and it's appreciated, and that goes farther than anybody can ever imagine. And the last thing I would say is this, that you know, we've had a lot of media over the last few months, and I see a lot of cameras back there, and I hope today that the reporting that we see on the internet and in the hard print copy and on television, I hope that there's been so much misinformation floating around, whether it's SB2 or this bill, the issues we'll be dealing with today, particularly on the internet. I don't think I've ever seen the amount of misinformation that we're seeing with regard to education, finance, and school choice and all these things this session. And I just hope that people will have the courage and the integrity to not print inaccurate information. And if they want to show both sides of the argument, that's great. That's what we're all about here. But show the truthful side too, because there's an event going on in one of my counties tonight, and I understand how they've set it up, and it's on school finance, and I'm absolutely convinced and assured that they're going to be presenting a lot of information that is absolutely incorrect. And you know, it's not going to change my vote, and it's not going to change anybody's vote in my district on how they vote in the next election. But it really confuses and upsets our teachers, and that bothers me a great deal. And I just hope that accurate information will get out there about what we're trying to do on salaries, what we're trying to do on teachers' rights, what we're trying to do coming up soon on discipline.
Protecting TRS.
Protecting TRS and incentivizing and just saying thank you with some extra money to the teachers that are going that extra yard. So thank you, Madam Chair.
yes. Thank you, Senator King. Senator West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just had a couple other questions. Under the teacher retention alignment, it says that in 2025-2026 school year and each subsequent year, the salary increases will be maintained.
That's right.
So that means that the state is going to put more money into it to maintain it?
That's exactly right. And that's what I wanted to make clear during my layout. Is different than some of our bonuses and increases in the past. We're creating a specific teacher pay and retention allotment. So in our future budgets, it's prescribed what will be filled into those allotments based on this framework, and we would have to take action like in any other part of our budget to change that.
So it comes from the foundation school program?
That's right.
That's where the monies are going to be coming from? Okay. The House is going to go for that?
Senator.
They do if they love their teachers.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Senator.
No, I'm not finished.
Oh, you're not?
No, I'm not. When it comes to prohibiting across-the-board salary increases for staff, and we're talking about giving more flexibility to the schools, we also talk about the districts being able to periodically make changes in the salary schedule, which is a great thing, to adjust for significant inflation. Does this mean that a school can implement inflation-adjusted salary increases every year if they want to?
The school district can make changes as they choose on how they choose outside of this allotment to allocate their employment compensation dollars.
Okay, so
Inflation adjusted dollars is obviously, as appropriators, we talk about that all the time. It's very difficult for city, county, state, school districts in these times of high inflation, and I would encourage all of you to support national economic policies and candidates at the national level that pledge to keep our economy sound so that inflation doesn't run rampant. But as no one adjusts inflation dollars for the state, it is very difficult for us when we don't have inflation adjusted dollars to do the same. But districts will be, as we are, under those pressures with their local tax money to devise their budgets how they see fit.
they have discretion to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, under the new section 48.158, teacher retention and allotment, section E states that the commissioner shall not use revenue a district is entitled to under that allotment to count towards their entitlement calculation for the purposes of recapture. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you kind of go through that?
Yes, it's making sure that if tremendous dollars are issued to our districts on behalf of our teachers, that's coming from, again, our new budget culture or a newly created teacher allotment, which I keep saying this is new, but this was the Senate plan that we voted off the Senate floor in 2023 several times, right? We were trying to make sure that our teachers had permanence in what we were doing as a budget culture in Austin and these increased salaries. But that provision that you mentioned, Senator West, makes sure that with recapture and ways that districts receive money and money might be swept to come back to Austin, that nothing in these disbursements for teacher pay have any negative effect on districts with regard to those other school funding formulas.
Okay, now, I want to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Then why aren't other allotments accepted from the recapture, such as school safety, TIA, et cetera?
We're going to have a ton of bills and probably more hearings than any committee in the Capitol. So it's not in this bill, but I'm dealing with teacher pay in this bill. But if you have other ideas on that and other conversations, we can sure look at them.
Yeah, as it relates to recapture and what's
Yeah,
accepted.
we're not dealing with safety allotments and other allotments in this. And of course, there's a ripple effect across many different noble ideas that we have within the school finance formulas. And I don't want to play games with what teachers are going to be making and increase
No,
salaries.
and
for
I
teachers.
think all of us agree on that. It's just that
yeah.
other allotments are
Yes,
not
sir.
accepted. That's the issue that I was bringing up.
That's right. This provision protects school districts and makes sure that if they receive new monies from this teacher allotment, that those monies will be uninhibited. So I think that's getting to the heart of your question, and I know you had concerns about how other allotments might have an impact in the same type of way, but all districts, even recaptured districts, receive the teacher retention allotment that we're creating today.
Right.
And we don't want to have any impact in any regard on
Well, we can talk about it because I know
how those
the
other
witnesses-
monies flow.
Because I mean, the reality is they also receive these other allotments also.
That's right.
And they flow and they're not accepted. That's the issue. We can talk about that a little later.
Thank you, Senator West. Senator Hinojosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great bill, Senator. I just want to kind of piggyback off of Senator West, some of his questions, but just for more clarity. So am I understanding this correctly in that with this new allotment, we're actually also removing the constraints from the basic allotment and allowing more of that flexibility, as I think that was stated? Because there's been some question about, well, what about our counselors and our nurses and all that? And I heard you say that in your opening, and I just want to clarify. So we're removing those constraints, and that's going to allow for the districts to increase pay for their counselors and nurses and bus drivers and et cetera. Is that fair to say that?
Yes, and it's worth repeating. I appreciate you bringing that up. Is in House Bill 3 from 2019, there were stipulations placed on the use of the basic allotment tied to forcing that basic allotment, however it's funded, for 30% of that to be used for teacher pay and payroll overall. So if we reduce the guardrails or remove them off of the current basic allotment, it frees up the district for paying support staff or nurses or librarians. It also frees up the basic allotment with a tremendous burden of billions of dollars of teacher compensation to be found elsewhere in the budget. That basic allotment can also be used in ways it hasn't been used before for energy costs and transportation costs and day-to-day things that affect some districts different than other districts. Some districts have plenty of counselors, Senator Menendez. We've talked about this quite a bit. Some need, with a new bond package that has just been approved by the voters, there aren't enough security perimeter fencing plans within those new as-built and architectural renderings for those new schools. And they want to make sure that they can use the flexibility within that basic allotment for those purposes. So we think that not only are we taking care of teachers like we should be, but we're freeing up the districts to not have their hands tied on how the current basic allotment is used. For a district of 15,000 students and under, the equivalent of what we're doing on teacher pay is in between a $300 and a $400 difference increase on the basic allotment if we just poured all of that into the basic allotment itself. And even coming into last session, the audacious request in jest, I say that in fun, but a lot of the education service centers were telling me that $225 was their goal that they were hoping for on an increase to the BA. That was coming into the 2023 session last time around. We're way above that on an equivalency. So the House may pour more of their priorities into the basic allotment. We may fill certain buckets and create a permanent teacher allotment. And then at the end of session, we'll come together and we'll negotiate those differences. So I appreciate the questions because they're right on target.
Right. And then in addition to that, is it my understanding that it's not a deduction in any way for a teacher to utilize the free pre-K if they have children in that category? They're getting that in addition to the pay increases. Is that correct?
That's correct. Right now, that would be a cost to those teachers with their own littles in the district.
That's substantial
And it would
cost in a lot
be,
of cases.
yes, it would be above and beyond that. And look, we don't want our best and brightest of our workforce in Texas to have to make a decision between, staying home with young children or standing up for the children of Texas and our future workforce. We want to accomplish both. And there is absolutely no reason why Texas, with its prosperity, can't make sure that that happens.
In addition to that, with the legal defense fund that is set up, again, that's an added benefit where it could free up automatic dues deductions if they opt in. Is that correct as well? Is it for additional savings?
That's correct. That will tie in and make a lot of sense with our safety-related legislation that's coming soon in our, I say, future hearings very soon, in our public hearings that will be set. Because from the districts that I visited, from Beaumont ISD to El Paso ISD, from North Texas and the Metroplex to schools in the Valley, I'm hearing that safety and keeping order in the classroom and being supported by administrators on making sure that violent propensity disruptors and students are dealt with in a way that teachers feel safe. That liability protection fund that we're creating will help teachers know that, I mean, teachers have immunity when it's about teaching. But if they have to defend themselves, to protect themselves, we have many teachers in this state that are expecting. And we have students that are, let's just say, anger management is an issue these days, and we're also investing incredibly in mental health. We're all of these subjects, when we post them on Facebook or we feature them in a press release, they seem like they're in a vacuum, and we're not thinking or talking about any other problems going on. And I want to assure everybody listening that we are. And we're working with urgency in a way that values your time and respects your needs as teachers, and this is just the next step. So thank you.